today we're going to discuss Article 12 and what is fundamental rights. So, Article 12 is the very first article in the Chapter 3 of the Indian Constitution which deals with fundamental rights. So let's understand what fundamental rights are to begin with. So, fundamental rights are basic, inalienable rights that we get by the virtue of us being human beings. The concept took birth in 17th century and was primarily theorized by two famous theorists, Locke and Rousseau. They argued that for the purpose of the human society to grow, for the human personality to develop, human beings should be given certain basic rights, and it should also be recognized by the state. The Declaration of French Revolution also talked about how important these rights are, and it is the function of the state to protect these rights. So, if you look at it, fundamental rights can be interpreted in two ways. The first is that it is the basic rights given to citizens, like I mentioned before. The second way to interpret fundamental rights is it also creates checks and balances to the state actions. For example, Article 13 of the Indian Constitution makes sure that the state cannot make laws which violate the fundamental rights. So, hence, it can be looked at in two ways, right? Now, in the modern world, the United States was the very first constitution that recognized fundamental rights. However, we should realize that fundamental rights actually wasn't a part of the American Constitution when it started. Once the American Constitution came out, it was heavily criticized because it did not mention any fundamental rights. So, later on what happened was that they added 10 amendments to their constitution, which are known as the Bill of Rights, and fundamental rights was recognized. Now let's jump to India, shall we? Let's talk about fundamental rights in India. So as we know, India was a British colony, and the leading political party then was advocating for fundamental rights, even when India was a colony, right? But of course, they didn't really listen to the efforts made by the Indian Congress, because I think that giving fundamental rights would not be beneficial for them politically as well. So they didn't really listen to the efforts of these political parties. So once India gained independence, the Constituent Assembly was hell-bent on making sure that it recognized the fundamental rights of its citizens, because of all the pain and all the suffering that its citizens have been through, and given how diverse the country is, they made sure that fundamental rights were a part of the Constitution, and there was not even a little bit of objection towards this notion. No one in the Constituent Assembly mostly objected to fundamental rights being a part of the Constitution. Hence, fundamental rights were given to the Constitution and became a very important part of the Constitution, which is Part 3. Now we have discussed what fundamental rights are, and we have also learned that it's upon the state to protect these fundamental rights. And if you look at Part 3, most of the fundamental rights are enforceable against the state. So it is important for us to understand what a state is. So Article 12 helps us in defining what the state is. Now, as per Article 12, a state could be government and the Parliament of India, government and the legislature of the state, all local authorities, and the fourth one is other authorities. Now, if we look at Article 12, the first three are very clear to understand and have their definitions. But other authorities, what does that mean? What does other authorities mean? It's not defined anywhere in the Constitution. It's not defined anywhere. So that's the main and most important part as students that we need to understand what is other authorities. Is your university a state? Is the airport a state? Are you the state? What? Because anything could be under other authorities. I'm not anything. But what is other authorities? And once something is proven to be the state, people can sue that authority for the breach of fundamental rights. So what we need to understand is how has the Supreme Court defined other authorities? Now, there is a lot of jurisprudence since the independence which deals with what other authorities are. There are a few case laws, and there is an evolution of thought over the years of what the state is and what other authorities comprises of. So in the next video, I will discuss each case individually and talk about what that case said and how it tried to define other authorities. So take care. I hope it helped. And since this is Corona times, stay inside, stay safe, and you're awesome. Always remember that.